Thank you. As Gustav said, my name is Jelena Liard. I work as a lead UX UI designer at Tetra Pak at a department called, it's really long name, Software Development Team of Excellence. So we started a trip against Agile Designing in teams 4 years ago. So that's the story I'm going to tell. I'm not going to be that specific about all the details about methodology that we are using because that's the information that you can find online in all the books. I'm going to tell you our personal story about the findings and teachings that we learned through these 4 years. So how did it start? 4 years ago, Tetra Pak decided to develop their first a big internal mobile app. And the scope was quite simple. We have field service engineers and they're traveling a lot. So field service engineers, there are like a couple of thousand of them. They are the guys running around serving all the machines. They are the closest, the ones working to our customers. They're doing maintenance, they're doing service on the machines, and they're always traveling. So, and they need to do some kind of complex time reporting, but it's not about the working hours. They have to connect it to service orders, and yeah, it's not that easy. So the scope was, okay, let them do this on the road because they're sitting on airplanes, they're sitting on trains, they're driving, they don't want to come to the hotel room, open their laptop and start doing the hours reporting. So everybody was agreeing that this is a good scope, we see the need, and the users was also some that see the need. Goal was also to develop this agile-wise. Already was Tetra Pak seeing the need of developing agile to be flexible, to be fast. So we put together a development team. We set up a Scrum-based plan. So they're going to do it on Scrum and they're going to do it agile. So what happened? Result a year later was we delivered a product that nobody liked and we killed a product that nobody liked. Yeah, that was not fun. It was a whole team of developers working a whole year, so you can imagine the cost. So we ask ourselves, why did we fail? We realized that although we implemented the Scrum and we implemented the Agile development, the application was never user-centered. The Agile delivery was mostly driven by complex business needs. The fast changing was there, but the fast changing was not driven by the end user's needs. It was driven by the needs, by the business, and old-fashioned way of working with quite complex demands. Applications was really hard to understand and really hard to use. Some of the users were not wanting to use it at all, and most of them were doing it wrong. So that created a lot of backend issues for administrator that need to come back to the users with emails and chase them by phone. So you reported this wrong, and the users were really not happy because instead of helping them, this actually created even more jobs. So from that realization, we come to certain insights. Agile way of working is still valid. We want to release in small batches that give us some kind of ability to change quite fast. If we didn't do this project Agile, it would probably take much more than 1 year to crash. We also realize that users are driven by business to consumer experience. They are not accepting this bad UX in their working environment as they used to before. They're using the same phone for the private good experience application as they're using with their work applications. They're expecting the experience to be the same. We also have dependencies on other systems. We are depending on Apple and iOS. We are depending on SAP systems and their updates, and they are continuously updating all the features, and we need to adapt to those changes a lot. For example, now this latest iOS 13 update, it crashed all of our apps. It was literally 2 sprints of just debugging because it was, stuff happened. Dark mode was not fun to handle. So crashes are a bit expected, we need to handle that. So from these insights, we created some visions, how we're going forward. We set a vision that we need to learn fast. we need to deliver continuous improvement. And that's because we're based on feedback and business demands. So feedback from users, but also changes in the technology and also changes in business demands. And we need to change fast when it's needed. And that created a new mindset from us. Our vision that gave us a strive to change how we're thinking about development. Realization was that everything is changing. The technology, our users, the users' needs, the business needs are living in the fast software development environment that is constantly changing. We can't assume anything. We are, yeah, as I said, we have codependencies with other technologies that also evolving fast. We also realize that we can't assume and predict the complexity of the final product. We started looking around for help. How are we going to solve this? It's not the Tetra Pak most familiar way of working, so we need to go outside to see what the world is talking about. And there was a lot of smart people, a lot of interesting stuff going on, but we found this guy. He's really nice, though. I met him once. This is Jeff Gottlieb. He and his colleague Josh Saden wrote 2012 a book called Lean UX: Designing Great Products with Agile Teams. So this is quite old. It's 8 years old now, book. So I think most of you heard about the Lean UX, but I still see that it's more as a concept base, and the people are still struggling to how implement Lean UX way of working with the agile and with the uh, business demands. I'm going to do a short recap about what Lean UX is. Quoting Jeff, Lean UX is product discovery. Inspired by lean startup and agile development is the practice of bringing the true nature of a product to light faster in a collaborative, cross-functional way. Or, even more, it's a state of mind that helps teams to embrace the continuous change. It's a tool that's going to help your teams create a common understanding for all team members of what do you want to achieve and why. So, we started our journey towards a Lean UX way of working. So, fast forward 3 years later, I can honestly say it's been quite a ride. So, to set your mood right, I'm going to show you this little gem. It's a short film that we just released last week. That is just a commercial for us, but it's quite cute. So I want to show it anyway. Oh no, I didn't. Let's see. Yay. We are so proud of that. It was actually the UX team of that department that produced that movie. So it was not the communication department. So let's see. Um, so what's the Lean UX and how do we work with it? As I said before, I'm not going to be that detailed about methods. I recommend to take a look at Jeff's book. You don't have to read it side by side. I haven't. There is really good TED talks by him and on YouTube videos that you can get that you can watch to get understanding more about Linux. There is two important principles that we should have in mind. The first one is you're always moving from doubt to certainty. As fast as we confirm one assumption, the other one's gonna show up. And accepting the state of continuous learning is crucial to accepting Lean UX methodology. The second one is work in small batches. And it's just a simple practical statement that we can't resolve everything at once. We need to break down our problems in smaller, more doable issues. So the foundation of Lean UX thinking is the continuous learning cycle. It's here to bring the understanding that software development doesn't have an endpoint. Oh, project managers just love that. Instead, it's a constant iteration of generating ideas that build products. We measure product impact. We collect data. Data gives us insight that learns on something. And if needed, we start all over again. So that's what we want to do is we want to define a business problem. What is the vision and what is the change that business wants to see? We want to state the desired outcomes. What is the measurable change in the behavior of users that's going to help business to achieve that vision? We have to declare our assumptions. We are assuming that if the users get this feature, the change in their behavior going to lead to the vision of the business. And that's the hypothesis. It's so hard word to pronounce. So that's going to be the feature that we want to test. We want to test if this feature going to make the user outcome that's going to deliver business vision. So we test those. We mock. We sometimes just do prototypes by paper. Sometimes we do in-visual prototypes. Sometimes we just code because it's easier to just release actual feature and test live. Sometimes it's just surveys, but we interact with our users. We ask them, is this something that you find useful? Is this something that you understand? Is this something that you want? And that's going to confirm or reject our hypothesis. And I can say it's been a lot of those that we crashed. It's not something that we're just doing to show and tell and say, oh, we are user testing. We are actually rejecting a lot of features based on that users actually, they don't want them. We think, oh, but this is nice to have. And they're like, eh. So we evaluate, and on that assumption, there is kill, pivot, or keep. Kill, you don't want it, we kill it. Pivot, it's almost there, we need to do more work on it, or it's good, we keep it. So one of the main tools of working with Lean UX is actually the Lean UX workshops. Those workshops are like highly effective way of kicking off projects. In our teams, when we get the project to us, it's already been through a Google design sprint, so it's been questioned in their vision. But when we get them, it's not that feature-based, it's a little bit too vague. So we always start by taking the whole team, putting them into a room for a week together with some end user, some business, and breaking down the whole concept down to the feature. We usually get prototypes based on Google design sprints. We throw them away because we know that those prototypes are just visions. They are not based on actual features and actual user needs. So we also use workshops during the development. You don't have to do big ones. If you have a feature that you can't decide on, then you have to do a workshop. Those could be 1 week, is the ones that for the big things. I did one that was like 4 hours long, not really to recommend, but it's doable to do it in 1 day. We also did some in the start. Me and Matthias actually did one for 4 weeks. don't. That was the worst. No, it's and also unnecessary because the findings from 4 weeks are not better than findings after 1 week. Who should be in the workshop? That depends how big the scope is. If you're doing these kind of more big workshops that you are really not sure about the user needs, then it's really nice to have end users in the room with you. But you can also use them just as a test persons during your findings. But you can never, never, never skip user tests. So the whole point of the workshop is to state the outcomes. You have the user outcomes and you have the business outcomes, and both of those should be measurable. You can't just say like, "Oh, we want more of that, we want better that," and you want numbers because you want to validate that you are doing something right. Like one of the projects, the second operation of that time reporting app, there is actually vision that we're going to cut their time spend time reporting by 2 hours a month, I think it is. So if you 2 hours, 8,000 people, it's a lot of money. Business outcomes are the change that is defined from the business side. For example, as I said, more customers, higher interaction, less refunds. User outcomes, on the other way, is the change in user behavior. That kind of behavior change is going to drive the goals of the business. For example, if you have an online shop with clothes and you have too much refunds, okay, how are you going to solve that? Maybe not by doing the refunding process harder, but maybe you need to look at, are people buying the wrong sizes, for example? You can implement a feature that's solving that kind of problem, and you have a win-win situation where the user wins and the business wins. And the little thing about that sometimes can be really vague when we talk about outcomes. What are they for? The outcomes are actually the ones that are going to drive features. So you're going to take your outcomes and create features from them. So how are we doing it? Our ways of working. It's about building a shared understanding. As I said before, the Lean UX methodology is more just a tool to create this shared understanding among the team members of what are we doing and why are we doing it. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the learnings that we got from these 4 years. So you have to consider that this is like personal for us, for our team, that what worked for us. Get inspired about it, but I'm not saying that it's going to work for everyone. Everyone has to adapt their own methodology. So these three tools that we are using to create team designing are Lean UX workshops, design thinking, Agile development planning, or Scrum-based task handling. Lean UX, it's used to understand and define what are we going to do. Agile way of working is giving us possibility to do that because we can be flexible, we can adapt to use this continuous learning against user testing. And Scrum-based planning has given us focus for what we are doing now, because sometimes business forgets that we also need peace of mind to create. So by having sprints that are fixed, now we know these 2 weeks, are we just focusing on this? Okay, if something crashes, then we have to adapt, but we are not meddling with the tasks on the board because that's for the team's peace and quiet. So interaction sprints is inspired by the Lean UX flow. We start always by backlog grooming, where we prioritize the user stories. We also use backlog grooming for discussing and generating ideas for the features. The team quickly take a look of the user story and, okay, should it be that kind of, should it be a wizard, should it be a drop-down menu? And there is the first chance for developers to give designer the input of what kind of solution they think is most solid for this feature. Then designer take all of that, goes and draw a little bit, maybe do a prototype, or sometimes we just build. I have one of my teams, they're so fast in building that I can't handle to design in that pace that they are doing it. So we are designing by talking. We're just discussing, maybe drawing something on the paper, and they just doing it because they have so many, they have a library already built with all the components, so they don't need to have detailed views of everything. Yeah, then we prototype, we build, we deliver, or we test, we collect feedback, and we improve. This one is nothing that I heard from Jeff talked about, but I think it's one of the learnings that are important from us. When you're developing Agile, it's so many features being done so fast. And the product owners just love them because they can go to business and they can go to steering group and say, look at them, they did that. And users love it because, oh, now it look at this, look at this, look at this. But the team is maybe, the product is getting messy after a while. After like 6 months, you'll be doing features after features, but you never actually took a grasp over the whole UI. So this is something that we now, when we start new projects, we explain to product owners that we're going to need to have these break sprints, maybe a sprint just to do code cleanup, maybe a sprint just to focus, or two, just to focus on putting the UI together. Because you can't just press in everything in a really short amount of time and think it's going to stick together. So quick solution that are not good anymore also is a really good thing to do, because when you're developing really fast, you're okay, this is good enough. We're going to release it. We're going to test it. We see the user reaction. And the user reaction is probably going to be okay because maybe it's a new feature that they're not used to it. But then after a while, these good enough features are not good in the long run because they're not component with the rest of the application. I like that I have a cold. So, what about the team? I'm really proud about this. Great minds don't think alike. When creating this gathered theme thinking, it can't be forgot that all of us are individual. We can't be like, okay, you're a designer, you're a developer, and you are at the same level about designing or same level of development. We need to understand that every person in the team has their specialty. So we are talking about the full stack teams. And the full stack team is not about having like 5 people and that one is that one is that. It's about creating a team that has all the competence that you need to deliver this project. And that competence needs to be devoted to this team. So you can have, I can say, usually it's an front end, back end, it's test, it's UX UI, it's Scrum Master. But we had a lot of teams that actually, after a while, getting to cross over. One team, we lost a front-end developer, and we had a trouble to find a new one. So the test guy was like, I want to learn Xamarin. So he learned Xamarin. So now he's doing both text and front-end. Another project that we had, I needed to drop that like really emergent because there was another project that needed me. So in like 2 days notice, I just left the team. So they didn't have any designer, but that team was working together for a whole year and designing together. So the guys just downloaded Sketch, took my files, and they're not doing the designing job by themselves. And I'm there just looking, okay, so you don't miss me. But so it's about not creating this kind of dependencies on single person. Everybody should understand what everybody is doing. A little flow chart, how it looks like. This is the Lund Department. We are actually 8 teams now. We were 1 when I started 4 years ago. Now we are 4 in Lund, 4 in India, Shaka. And this is a little bit organization that we have. Some roles that are shared and some roles that are more in the Scrum teams. And the interesting thing that we are also cross collaborating. The tests have their own chapter. Backend share knowledge, and the us UX team are also having our own chapter. Once a week we have meetings, but we are all the time running between the tables because we are sitting in teams. We're not sitting together. We're sitting with our developing teams, but we are running back and forth and asking, oh, how did you do this? How did you do that? We are sharing assets. We build a component library together. We produced a movie. So we are collaborating in really high level, but we are still sitting with our developing teams because we need to be a part of discussion on a daily basis. So, how to be a good team player though? Because it's a demanding way of working. You need to compromise a lot, you need to communicate a lot, you need to be humble in your way of working. So, there are some insights around that. Share knowledge. Don't keep your stuff to yourself. You need to evolve all your team. It doesn't matter what role you have, you need to let everyone know what's working. I can't code, I don't know code, but I can understand how we build apps because my developers are sharing knowledge with me on the daily basis. I also know how the SIP works because I'm listening to those kind of discussions. So everyone needs to understand what's going on. Be cross functional. We already talked about that. Give and take feedback. And this one is a hard one. It could be hard for designers, but I think designers are more skilled in taking feedback because our schools are teaching us that. Developers, on the other hand, not that much. But we need to be we need to be open about it. That we are not all knowing wizards, none of us. We need to be open that somebody thinks in some other way and take those kind of discussions. But we also need to take responsibility for our specialties. We are designing as a team, but it's my role as a designer to drive those kind of changes, those kind of behaviors that are going to help team to design. I can't just say, oh, it's not my problem, we are doing it as a team, because I still need to fix that we are proper way of delivering design, that we are proper way of discussion, that we are discussing the right stuff, that we are implementing the linear X. At the test person needs to implement the right kind of test ways of working. So we are doing together, but we have respect for each other's specialties. So, what are the benefits that we learn? This is a little bit a recap. We have the quick interactions. We have a fast way of developing features. We can develop improvements, but also switch focus when needed. With our mutual understanding of why and what. The backend developer knows as much as I know about user needs and behaviors. And we have user-centered way of delivering. Every question that we can't answer, we ask our users. And we're going to challenge the company. We actually challenge this big data-driven system of time reporting that was like really, I think sometimes in the 80s, 80s, some developer build this kind of backend system where they are collecting time reporting data, and it was demanding for our users. So instead for them to just do quick time reporting, they need to do stuff that was actually administration kind of work. So we questioned that, and it's been tough for us, but we questioned the questions because we were saying the engineers should engineer, administrators should administrate, not other way around. But there are also some challenges. It's not easy to be a designer in this kind of teams. It's much more comfy to sit with your designer friends in some creative room, and then you can ask, you understand each other, you're just going to clap at each other's back, nobody's going to question. It's going to be tough when you have to do your designer feedback, because then you have a group of developers that's going to question everything that you did. It's new responsibility of developers. They need to suddenly be involved in design decision. They have to understand users. They have to understand business goals. Gone are the days when they can just sit, relax, and question every designer decision that has been made. And we have also fast interaction with users. And that's a great tool. But from experience, I know that it's not always that easy to find your test groups. You can maybe find it in first iteration, but to keep them, to maintain them, to change them, because you burn out your test persons. So that's more, yeah, that's more challenging that way. So a little bit in the end, I want to again lift that it's not a fixed tool, LinuX. I told you a little bit about how we adapt it, but I think it's a great tool, and it's a mind setting tool. It's changing the way how business works. I can say one thing, that it's to be able as a design team, as a developing team, to really work in a LinuX kind of way, you need to have the support from bosses. You need to have somebody that is believing in that way of working, that believing that is okay to take these break sprints to clean up, that is okay to change all the time, that it's okay to say we're never done or we don't know when we are done. You need to have people that you have to, these kind of patrons that believe in you. So a bit, where are we now? We are still on our way. We are proud and we are humble. We are proud about the change we made because we came to a company that was doing everything but really fixed waterfall, and we created the small revolution. But we're also humble because we know that much that we know that we don't know that much. So we still want to strive for experimenting. We still want to learn much. So thank you. And here's my email and also on LinkedIn. I don't have Gustav here. If you have any questions that you came up later on, you want to know more, just contact me on email or LinkedIn. So where is Michael now? We're waiting for the pizza or? Okay, then we can start with question and open for questions. We did that at start, but then it became like enormous. So we actually, one part of our department like became a little sister department of ours. So in the start, we were doing Google Design Sprint as well, but then we couldn't handle them anymore because the demand of Google Design Sprint at Tetra Pak is enormous. So they're doing a lot of Google Design Sprint that doesn't come to our table. So we are separating that, but it was a part of our department from the start. So we have that kind of understanding of what they're going to bring. And the big learning that we learned was when we took prototypes and decision made the Google Design Sprint, just started developing on that. That didn't really. Yeah, of course, because the design sprint is going to give you the big picture. It's going to give you the vision. It's going to give you what are these kind of changes that business want to achieve, and they're also going to give you user needs, but in a quite broad picture. They do it in 1 week. Not. Yeah. It's two different kind of methodologies. The Google Design Sprint is the Jake Knapp guy from Google that wrote, but they are really similar. They have a lot of similarity in the process. I just think the outcome of these two are a little bit different because Lean UX is much more feature based. So it's much closer to development than Google Design Sprint. So we're actually using like Google Design Sprint for the first iteration, because at Tetra Pak, you have somebody that gets an idea. Oh, I want to do an app about this. And they're maybe really good at pitching, and they go to the boss. They're going to pitch this idea. They're going to get budget for that. And it used to work like that. The person that was good at pitching actually break down the idea. But now they have to go to Google through Google Design Sprint. It doesn't always fly. So that's like the first iteration we do. And if it go through Google Design Sprint, and if we decide that this is our kind of project, then it lands at our table. But we never heard about it before, so we have to adapt it as a team. So we do Lean UX to ramp up the team and to break it down to epics and features so that we can start developing. And we usually can start to develop, if we do Lean UX 1 week, we start develop on Monday. More? Do you want to say something? Or? This is my sidekick. This is Matthias. He works with me.
Can you hear me? Yep. So again, the design sprint is all about the outcome, what you want from out of it. So you can use a design sprint, as Jelena is saying, as a tool to get verify an ID, if that's what the outcome you want. But you can also use design sprints as a tool inside of Lean UX if you have want a different outcome. So again, we work a lot with outcomes and what you want to achieve. So it could be prior, and it could also be under the umbrella of Lean UX. So it depends on what outcome you are looking for.
personally, I think that I think the person that is driving a lot of these external changes is Helen Björkman. She's the leader of the Google Design Sprint, and they are the ones that being some kind of front. Um, Mikael, that is the department manager for our department. We are really focused inside, but we were talking about that we need to spread, and this evening is one of the initiatives we're taking to spread the word because we learned so much, and we really want to show for the rest of Tetra Pak. But they're coming to us to learn. You know, we get the guides, tours, and they like we are the only department at Tetra Pak that actually have fixed tables. The rest have to go around with their computers and find the free. But we have fixed tables. So, and when you come up to our department, it's pamphlet, it's balloons, it's look like mess, and the cleaning lady is really upset because she can't clean. And but it's another way of working, and we need to fight for that because they're like, yeah, but you shouldn't have fixed desks. But yeah, how gonna implement the team way of working with a scrum board in background with all the cards and are discussing if we don't have fixed. It could be such a small thing that could be like a hinder in this way of working. Sorry? Yeah. I would like to really tell you a lot, but I wasn't really a part of that because that failed before I came to department. So I just picked the big learnings. But I know there were some technical issues as well. I'm not going to drop any names about what kind of platform we used, but I think it was also about the platform that we use was that kind of developing tool that is for the fixed scope, and then they want to do it agile, so it crashed all the time. I come into the project after just before they killed, and I try to say like, oh, but can't you change this button, can't you really change this drop down, can you, the scroll wasn't like native, we couldn't do anything, it was totally fixed. So that was also one of the reasons that you also need to know your platform and choose the right way of developing. um, we also make some mistakes in the early years. Oh my god, it sounds so old. That the developers were hard coding features. So when we later on, yeah, maybe this should be, maybe we should have tab bar instead. Oh, we can't do a tab bar. Why not? Yeah, but it we didn't redo. So now we're building a designer library in Xamarin. Most of our apps are doing in Xamarin. So they're packing something called Nugets. I don't really know what it is. So we can be flexible and have more like a puzzle framework where we can pick between all the teams and change. And every part of development should be built in that way so it could be changed. We not want to close doors because now we know that we maybe just want to start over in 3 months. Yeah? Not the Google Design Sprints, no. Just Linux. Do they?
So again, it depends what outcome you're looking for. So if we have the ones that Jelena is talking about up front, where the outcome is supposed to be to validate an ID, just a very high level ID, then they usually don't. But if there is some value to that ID and we want to continue and actually do something with it, then we strongly believe, as Jelena is saying, in the team effort. And then we have the team coming in and participating. So it's a little bit where in the metaspace the ID lives and what outcome we're doing. So we had one where we were quite sure that we want to do it. So we brought in the whole development team. Yeah. And then we actually crashed the ID because the developers came up with it was not a good idea.
Yeah.
And we redesigned the whole thing again. So it depends where on your journey you are and what you want outcome. So a design sprint is actually just a tool. It's like a fancy 6-up. But it
now
takes
you have to
a week.
explain what 6-up
So
is.
it's just a design tool. It's just a design methodology. So a design sprint is just a methodology. It can be used by itself, and it can be used under the umbrella of Lean UX. And if you want to have the team with you, you bring the team into there. Otherwise, you go back and you have your waterfall designed and analyzed by someone else, and the team implements. And then you're back in waterfall. So as strongly you don't do that when you are close to actually realizing the idea, then you should bring in the team. Otherwise, you're back in waterfall.
We don't do extensive research because we realize that ability for us to do quick interaction is more valuable. I think extensive user research is a bit waterfall thinking because it's gonna if you like spend 2 months researching some kind of features, then you invest 2 months of time, and that's going to give so much strength to that research, but you don't really know because if you're wrong, because it's still just testing. So we instead want to do quick fast interaction that doesn't give us much risk. So yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yes. And it's also, we already know a lot about our users. We already released like 5, 6, 7, 8. How many apps do we know? I don't know. So there is a lot of stuff that we already know. Yeah. And we are not, this is going to sound funny. I'm not a believer of documentation. Yeah. No, but because I think that the stuff that are valid, the stuff that are important, we're going to remember because that's coming back all the time. I think spending a lot of time, but this is our products. I need to say that this is valid for us. I can clearly understand that some different kind of products, they have to have different kind of approach. But for us, is totally interaction going to just say to us, okay, you're still right or you're still wrong. So like our design system is really, it's a sketch file that is really not that much. It's icons, it's topography, it's colors, and it's basic components. And we decided that as a UX team that we didn't want extended this kind of heavy design system library because we don't want to set this kind of boundaries. We want to be flexible, we want to change all the time. Ja, varsågod. Så länge du håller med.
So it's I 100% agree with you that you have to strike the balance between early research and the team because of course it's more expensive than a lot of teams. But then you should also calculate on how expensive is it to build the journey for the team to understand and be able to participate. Because if you go away 2 persons and do research, they are starting to build a journey. They're building domain knowledge. They're building understanding. And how are you going to transfer that information to the people that are actually going to do the work? So if they are part of that journey, they build it together and they have the cross-functional view, they can get different perspectives on it. And then you're back in a team doing it together. And there you save a lot of money and a lot of not having to chuck things over the fence. So this is the key message with Lean UX, that the team is responsible. The team is responsible for the UX and the whole journey.
Yeah. And I'd just like to say that I have 2 of my fellow designers here. Rodrigo is hiding over there. It's the guy with the mustache. He's actually the part of the team that's doing Google Design Sprint. So if you have questions around that, go to him. And Ellen, sitting there in the corner, she's part of my department. She's fellow app developer designer. So I just wanted to introduce them so you know there is other people to ask questions. Anyone else? We're waiting for. Oh, sorry.
How do you gather user feedback?
Different kind of ways. In the start, during the Lean UX workshop, we actually have a user insight during the actual workshop, and then we also book in tests during the workshop when we test the prototype. So when we start developing, it depends a little bit how far the product has come. It could be all from like surveys We send out surveys by asking, should you find this feature friendly, so good to have or not? It could be interviews by Skype or WebEx that we use. We use InVision prototyping because our apps are really content heavy, and sometimes we just need to find out, do you really need all this information? When we are more using user interaction UX wise, then it's mostly live in the apps, because building prototypes can be really expensive, and for us is just as easy to actually code and send out releases, because we are releasing apps. Most of the apps are released in small batches, like we first release for a test group of 10, then for test group of 30, then we release for like 100, then the first we have this kind of clusters, then the first cluster, then the second one, so we can iterate all the time by live feedback, and they're really engaged because they have to use these apps. So they're like sending feedback. We have like built in the apps that you can if something is wrong, you can't do something, and you can also send just feedback. I think this kind of improvements, but they're quite engaged. They're engineers, so they're tech savvy, they're interested, and they really want to make themselves their own lives easier. So in that way, it's a little bit easy for us. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's a team decision. It's usually when we see that there is some kind of gap from the business side, because sometimes it could be that we are waiting on some kind of decision, maybe budget decision, or that they need to take a decision on some big feature. Then okay, now we see it's the pace is taking down. Can't we do this for? And then the business owner has to give their okay. Um, but it's totally worth it. And a part of our process, when we get the business owners on site, they're actually the clients. They're coming from the outside, and we give them this kind of scope. Okay, we are working this way. We have to use a test. We have to do this kind of breaks. This is our way of working. So we don't really give them opportunity to avoid that. Um, but it's hard for business owner because they stand between these two worlds of really waterfall driven business, result driven. They want to have fixed scopes, budget, timelines, and then we are on the side, we see what happens. So it's yeah, so they're brave people. Yeah. So pizza is here. I don't know, last question before the pizza, or okay, you can take that. Take that.
So it's super hard. Um, so you need to find someone that has some believe in you, and we had a very strong champion for us that's been fighting a lot of battles for us. And basically, you can only do it that far as you get permission to do.
Yeah.
You can grow that much from bottom up, but at the end, if you want to scale it up, you need an executive sponsor that really believes in you and sort of protects you when you cut corners and break processes, because we do, and we've been doing that for 4 years. Me, Jelena, and others. We do what we have to do in order to get the job done in an agile way, and of course, we trample on toes. So you need your executive sponsor. Only you can only from bottom and top. But yes, that's one of the key things.
So none and none. Uh, yes, I was on the two teams. I wouldn't recommend that. That was experiment that we just did, and I just actually dropped one of the teams because we have demand to be a part of all the stand-ups, all sprint plannings, all the grooming, and yada yada yada. And when you're sitting on the two teams, they eat up all of the time. So we experimented with that. It doesn't really work. So yes, one per team.
Let's say you don't have enough designers for each team. Do you have any suggestions for
Then you prioritize. We've been that situation as well. Then it was prioritizing and setting. more like, okay, how are we going to communicate between designers and the team? I was once on 3 teams, and that was just like, okay, instead of sitting with all the meetings, I just went to like the test person or the product owner, and they gave me the scope. But I was still running back and forth between designing and teams. So I was all the time checking with the developers how we're going to do this, but I missed a lot of information. So you do your best. You have to prioritize what kind of meetings are you going to attend, but it's nothing to it's not to recommend.
And we do also believe that it's a team sport to do design, but of course we need specialists like Jelena. But it's super important that you start seeing that the design is the responsibility of the team, and the team picks up things. And in the beginning, it's super scary for people to do design. But if you can draw a circle, a square, and a triangle, you can start designing. You're not good, but you can start your journey. So as Jelena said before on her slide, is that we are not looking for the persons, we are looking for the competence in the teams. And then the designers can help to share their knowledge. But of course, it's not a good idea to, so we want to have them dedicated. But
Yeah.
if you don't, focus on the capabilities in the teams instead of the people.
I think really mature teams, as I tell before, one of the teams are actually without designer now, but they're so mature in their way of working, and they already have a library with a lot of components, so they can just they have our in UX chapter just okay, we need some new icon or something like that. But in really fresh teams, it's you need that competence, or you're gonna lose it. You can't. You need that focus and that drive from a designer to drive those changes in the team thinking to get the user value. It's like you can't handle without coders. So designers are important as well.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Would you like us to continue with the Q&A after the break, or?
Or you can just mingle and yeah.
All right, big hand.
Thank you.